The 2023 season will be remembered by Sergio Perez as the year his career was almost cut short. Inconsistent form and an inability to adapt to a changing RB19 led to calls for him to leave the team from around the sport, even within his own organization. He persevered through and helped Red Bull earn their first 1-2 finish in the Drivers' Championship, completing what was so nearly a perfect season for the team. He's saved his seat for 2024, but is out of contract at the end of the season, and his boss, Christian Horner, has offered a damning update on his future with the team, but not in the way you might expect. I'll cover all that and more in today's video. It feels like ages ago since Perez lived up to his once valid street race king moniker and won the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, cutting teammate Max Verstappen's lead to just 6 points as he vowed to take the 2023 title fight all the way. His pole in the subsequent Miami Grand Prix, with Verstappen down in 9th on the grid, was a chance to underline those credentials. But as the Dutchman scythed through the field to demote Perez, he struck a psychological hammer blow. The timing of that defeat couldn't have been worse. At the following race in Monaco, he lost control of the RB19 while going into turn 1 with too much speed during qualifying. A big slap into the barriers with the side of his car meant he was out in Q1 with no proper time set, and that meant his Sunday was ruined as well. In his desperation to try and get anything from the back of the grid, he attempted overtakes that were never on at the notoriously tight street circuit. A 16th place finish was all he could muster in a race that was littered with mistakes caused by desperation. That race was followed by a big upgrade to the RB19 for the Spanish Grand Prix, and then the car just got away from him. For 5 straight races following Max Verstappen's masterclass in Miami, Checo had failed to make Q3 in a car that was the most dominant compared to the rest since the McLaren MP44 of 1988. In the eyes of fans, the media, and the Red Bull team, a completely unacceptable failure. Despite a contract for 2024, pressure had started to pile high on the Mexican, and further ramped up when Daniel Ricciardo was brought back to replace Nick de Vries in the sister AlphaTauri team, with a clear aim of testing him out for a potential Red Bull return down the line. Perez's breaking point was the Qatar Grand Prix, during which he looked utterly lost and bereft of confidence, and finished 10th, over 80 seconds behind Verstappen, who sealed the championship that Perez once coveted, with 6 rounds to spare. While the alarm bells had been ringing for a while, Perez was so shell-shocked that he headed to the team's headquarters for 3 days of simulator work and brainstorming with his engineers on how to dig himself out of a hole that, to him, felt like the Mariana Trench. When asked why he waited until Qatar to take action and demand a brainstorming session, Perez replied, "Because Qatar was really the worst weekend I remember in a while, probably my worst weekend ever in the sport. It was such a bad weekend that I really felt like, I cannot be this bad, there's something that's going on." Taking just 1 podium in the final third of the season in Las Vegas and finishing on half the points tally of Verstappen, Perez is aware he still needs to find more over the season, but he feels the way he managed to steady the ship after Qatar was encouraging for 2024. "I always say people will only remember where you finish in Abu Dhabi, but I'm aware of the year I had," he reflected. "I think I've learned a lot, and I'm happy with how we managed to turn our season around. We really came out of it stronger than before and made good use of those bad days." Despite improvement toward the end of the season and securing second in the Drivers' Championship over Lewis Hamilton, Sergio Perez's place is far from safe at Red Bull. With his contract up at the end of 2024, speculation about whether he will be replaced, and who with, has been widespread. Many fans saw the return of Daniel Ricciardo to Red Bull as a sign that he would take Checo's spot on the team in 2025, or even earlier if the Mexican wasn't performing well enough for Red Bull. Ricciardo's former AlphaTauri hasn't been as impressive as many expected, and despite a desire from some fans to see him back at Red Bull, that position is far from guaranteed. Speaking to Sky, Horner was asked whether the battle for the second Red Bull seat is simply between Perez and Ricciardo. "Well, as a team, you want to field the most competitive pairing you can have," he said. "You want the right dynamic in the team. Max and Checo have been a tremendously successful pairing. Checo, in his 3 years with us, has finished 4th, 3rd, and 2nd, so he's on a good trajectory. Daniel is well known to us. It's great to have him back in the Red Bull fold. Of course, everything is open for 2025 onwards, so for us to have options both internally and also externally is no bad place to be." While Christian recognizes the progress that Checo has made at the organization, his comments are hardly an endorsement of the driver. At the same time, it isn't encouraging for Daniel either. The internal candidates that Red Bull have for the second seat from 2025 are pretty impressive. Checo could obviously retain his seat with a good showing in 2024, but with over half the grid out of contract at the end of the next season, Red Bull may want to make the move externally. There is also Daniel, but his performances at AlphaTauri versus Yuki Tsunoda didn't inspire confidence in his ability to recapture the form he showed at Red Bull all those years ago. Speaking of Yuki, he's looked far more settled in 2023 than he has done previously, but few people would call him a real candidate for a seat at the Red Bull team proper. Liam Lawson is the other option, and while he took to Formula 1 very quickly in his 5-race cameo for AlphaTauri, Red Bull will probably want to give him some time to settle in at AlphaTauri before throwing him into the lion's den alongside Max Verstappen. It is Horner's admission that they're looking at external candidates that is the most interesting. Perhaps Daniel's underwhelming return to Formula 1 has made him think he can't rely on his old favourite to step up in the place of Checo. As I said earlier, a lot of the grid are going to be looking for new contracts for 2025, which gives Red Bull plenty of drivers to choose from. Out of contract is obviously Red Bull's Sergio Perez, there's Aston's Alonso, both Williams drivers, the Sauber drivers, Haas and Alpine's drivers all out of contract as well, and both Ferrari drivers also. Though Charles Leclerc is strongly rumoured to get a new 5-year contract to keep him at the Scuderia until 2029. At the moment, that is 12 unfilled seats for 2025, but it is perhaps the Ferrari drivers being out of contract that is the most interesting to Red Bull. While Charles Leclerc would be of interest to Red Bull, Ferrari aren't going to let him go easily, but Carlos Sainz is definitely available. Sainz has enjoyed a respectable level of success since arriving at Ferrari in 2021, claiming his first F1 victory at the 2022 British Grand Prix, before becoming the only non-Red Bull driver to win a race in 2023 in Singapore. However, with Leclerc getting a massive contract extension, Ferrari have clearly said that Charles is their man, meaning Carlos might be tempted to look elsewhere. Sainz arrived on the F1 grid as Verstappen's teammate with Red Bull Junior team Toro Rosso in 2015, with the pair relatively evenly matched during their first year in the sport. Verstappen was promoted to the Red Bull senior team after just 4 races of 2026, with reports at the time suggesting the competitive tension between Verstappen and Sainz had resulted in an unhealthy atmosphere at Toro Rosso. Sainz spent one more season at Toro Rosso before switching to Renault, where he was ousted at the end of 2018, following the team's capture of Verstappen's then Red Bull teammate Daniel Ricciardo, before rising to prominence with McLaren in 2019-20. His performances for McLaren, where he registered 2 podium finishes at Brazil 2019 and Italy 2020, saw Sainz selected as Sebastian Vettel's replacement at Ferrari for 2021. With Red Bull willing to look externally for a driver from 2025, Sainz could be the perfect option. All of this does assume that Checo will definitely not get a contract renewal for 2025 though, which is not yet guaranteed. After struggling to keep up with the development of the RB19 in 2023, Perez is targeting that as an area to improve for 2024 as he attempts to retain his seat at Red Bull. During the winter, we're going to take the time with the engineers to go through things, he explained. Other than that, we're just going to focus massively on making sure we are able to progress with it through the season. I think that's the main thing. If you think about how we started the year, if we were able to keep progressing through the year, we would have had a much stronger season. If Checo is able to keep up with the development of the RB20, do you think he could do enough to get himself a contract extension beyond 2024? Or is his time at Red Bull up no matter what he does next year? Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below, and until next time, drive safe and bye for now.